talking point today. We are chatting, bargain hunting for an affordable hot hatch, specifically a hot hatch between the year 2000 and 2010. So why specifically this year range? Well, I'll tell you why. I actually started working in the early 2000s. Now, at that point, you get your first job. You have these grand ideas that you would like to buy, a hot hatch. Reality is, unfortunately, it's your first job. You're not really earning that much, which means that translates to not being able to afford a hot hatch. And even if you could afford a hot hatch, the insurance for that hot hatch would be astronomically expensive. But anyway, I'm digressing there. Fast forward years later, nostalgia sets in, and you're earning enough now to go back and buy your hero car. And what would you look at getting? I took a couple of nights back, I went onto Auto Trader together with Cars, I think it's cars.co.za, and just had a look at the classifieds to see what was out there. So what do we have on that list? Well, it wouldn't be a list without starting off with the Golf, specifically the Golf 4 GTI. Now, these were produced between 97 and 2003, and it brought about massive refinement changes compared to the Golf 3. Now, what do I mean by refinement changes is that the Golf 3 was a very sporty, well, any Golf for that matter, is a very sporty vehicle, but the Golf 4 just brought about this opulence. I remember when I first got into one, the seats come to mind first. Very supportive. Those were Recaro seats, if I remember correctly, absolutely comfortable, and there was just leather everywhere in the car compared to the outgoing model. So that's what I mean by refinement, this opulence that the Golf 4 had. But the real disappointment for me for the Golf 4 GTI was that even though it came with a turbocharged engine, it just did not offer the performance that the Golf 3 had. In fact, if I remember correctly, it was either the same or slightly, ever so slightly quicker in a straight line compared to the Golf 3 GTI. So I think that was the biggest downfall of that vehicle. And GTI owners, I remember at the time, they really were disappointed with that. But enter the Golf 5 GTI. Now, this had a run between 2004 to 2009. And this really was a game changer for VW. Again, I remember at the time, people, buddies of mine that purchased these, they came into the when we met them on the weekends, they rocked up in this, and man, oh man, this was an absolutely monster of a pocket rocket in the time. It really showcased the all-round capability of a GTI, a Golf rather. The performance was there, the refinement, and what I mean by refinement was, again, it just took a step up compared to the Golf 4. That opulence, that leather everywhere, the comfort. And of course, the performance on tap when you needed it. There was a 2-liter turbocharged engine paired with either a manual or DSG. I think the majority of the South African market opted for DSG, or those were brought in specifically with DSGs. And man, oh man, I remember driving this, and that DSG box was phenomenal. A lot of people steered away from manual gearboxes and opted for this DSG. It really was that good. Performance was there. Like I said, all-round capability was just there. The Golf 5 GTI, it really was that good. I know there were various reiterations of the the Golf 5 in various models, but again, we're just sticking to base models here, and this was really good. Price-wise on the Golf 5 GTI, going through the ads, I mean, you can pick up one from 100,000, but I'm fairly certain these were really run in hard by boy racers at the time. And fairly low, I use the word loosely, low mileage, in good conditions. One, from what I've seen on the classifieds, anything from 150 to 200. I've even seen one at 240k, low mileage. Again, looks clean, but that's the type of price that you should be looking at. So the next one on the list, we have the Toyota Runx RSI. Now, these Runx RSIs were really good. I mean, they were fantastic. They had, first and foremost, Toyota's reliability. If you have to ask someone what is the key thing they think about Toyota, and reliability is almost certain to come up. So these were reliable cars. Performance was there, normally aspirated, went revved up to about 8.5, 8.250 or 8.5, they're about redlined. So you really had to work this car in order to get the best out of it. Yeah, you keep on hearing me saying it was really good. I mean, these cars were good. I remember, again, sitting in them, driving them. It really was good compared to the GTI. The GTI was truly a game changer. But nevertheless, there are Toyota fans out there. They're probably listening in and saying, hey, why are you ditching this Toyota? Listen, guys, the Toyota is good. It's a good car. But I remember just back in the day, those cars were just getting hammered by turbocharged cars. So that's, I think, the reason why lots of people initially purchased them. In fact, I knew buddies that purchased them. They just got walloped from robot to robot, and eventually traded them in for Golf 5 GTIs. But nevertheless, from what I've seen, these are becoming rarer and rarer vehicles. Collector's items now, if you can get your hand on a TRD, consider it gold. In fact, I haven't seen one in recent times, but the last time I checked, TRDs were between 180 to 210,000 Rand if you can get your hands on one. But generally the Ronix RSIs go for round about, the last time I checked on Auto Trader and cars.co.za, they go for around about 150 to 180 odd K. So if you're wanting that, if the Toyota is your thing, you can be expecting to pay around about that price. Now, next on the list, we have the Renault Clio, specifically the 197. Guys, I cannot tell you how much I love this car. I remember getting into this car. You talk about a compact pocket rocket. This was that compact pocket rocket. Phenomenal car. The handling was brilliant, naturally aspirated. You had to ring this car to get the most out of the performance out of this, but man, it was absolutely rewarding. And you hear a lot of people talk about rewarding driving and stuff like this. I mean, this is one of those vehicles that it truly was. You had to manual gearbox, you had to wring its neck to get the performance out of it. But man, oh man, if you got it right, it really gave you that driving satisfaction. So yeah, the 197, from what I could see, between 70 and 100K. The only problem I find with these vehicles, and again, when I say problem, from people that I spoke to that have owned these vehicles, was that because it's a French car, parts are expensive. So that's the only downfall from what I gather from people in the know that have owned it. And of course, the other thing was depreciation. Because it's a French vehicle, depreciation was quite high. So if I remember correctly, back in the day, this was retailing for close on the 200, 210 odd mark, thereabout, and I stand to be corrected. But the only problem that I can foresee with these cars are parts, accessibility to parts, because it's a French vehicle. So the other vehicle that comes to mind is the Honda VTEC, the 2-liter. At the time, this had space age looks. To me, this was one of the best looking cars out there. It still is really a looker at the moment. I remember driving this. The gear shift was slightly elevated. It wasn't next to the handbrake at the bottom, slightly closer to the driving console. But man, oh man, this is also one of those cars like the Clio that really delivered. You had to get it into that VTEC range in order for that second cam to kick in. But still, man, it was brilliant. The sound also associated with this was absolutely fantastic. The problem with this vehicle was that, again, it was a normally aspirated vehicle. You had to wring its neck to get the most out of it, and the torque was at the upper end of the rev range, which means you really had to go chasing the revs to get into that torque band. Versus, and again, I'm referencing back to the turbocharged engine of the Golf 5 GTI, it was a much more linear power range compared to the Honda VTECs and the Toyotas. A massive performance upgrade to the previous outgoing VTEC, the Honda VTEC model, but still, nevertheless, just the look, feel of that car, the driving capability of that car was still, in my opinion, still is very good. These cars, from what I can see, again, vary in price, anything from 150 to 180K. But when I was looking online, I actually came across the Type R Championship Edition. Now I know I mentioned earlier on, we're just looking at the base hot hatch models. The Type R Championship Edition was a model above the VTEC model. And it just had little tweaks here and there. It had a pearl white paint job, if I remember correctly. That's what it was called. And I mean, I came across this, and this was at 250K. This would definitely be one of the ones that I would seriously be looking at acquiring. So another model that I came across was the Mazda MPS. Now, you hardly ever see these vehicles on the road. I don't know when last I saw one of these MPSs. And again, at the time, it was madness. If I remember correctly, I think it was a 2.3 liter engine, turbocharged engine, created, you know, crazy amount of power considering the size of the vehicle. I think it was roughly 190 odd kilowatts. Again, I remember back in the day driving this. Torque steer, I do remember torque steer on this vehicle. You had to, you know, really have a heavy hand driving this, but still it was front wheel drive, fantastic vehicle. It was a good vehicle, crazy amounts of power. It just didn't give you, however, that driving capabilities of all the other vehicles that I gave you. Yes, the power delivery was there, but again, I'm going to compare it back to, bring it back to the Golf 5 GTI. Power was there, it exceeded the Golf's power, but just that finesse, that delicacy of driving, that reward satisfaction, the Golf just delivered. The Mazda was just this brute power front wheel drive vehicle, and it just didn't give you that inspire confidence in driving compared to the Golf 5 GTI. But still, nevertheless, I know it definitely has its following, and I managed to find one, well, again, face value, relatively low mileage, interior looks quite good, and that was for around about 170K. So another hot hatch that caught my attention was the Mini Cooper S. Now, again, this vehicle back in the day, it was, I remember watching the Italian Job, and I saw this on the road, and wow, it really turned heads back in the day. A lot of people thought it was like a girly car to have. But even I drove the standard Cooper, and man, it was fantastic. You hear people talk about go-kart handling, but guys, you have to drive it to understand what they mean by go-kart. It truly is go-kart handling. You sit so low to the ground. The interior was fantastic. Big dial sitting in the center. It really gave it like a bespoke, a fresh interior look compared to all the other vehicles that were out there. But coming back to the performance of the car, just the handling, leave alone the performance of the engine, but just the handling, wow, it was really good. Then you factor in the Cooper S model, and that, if I remember correctly, they came out initially with a supercharged engine at the time. The later models have obviously got a turbocharged engine, but the supercharged engine at the time, wow, that was really good. Performance was there. Coming into corners, that car just cornered flat. It was really, really good. And these at the moment, I've seen them anything from 100 roundabout to 150K. But again, having chatted to friends that have owned these things, because it was such a compact car, these cars, the superchargers, and I think even the turbochargers, again, I stand to be corrected on the turbochargers, but on the superchargers, there were heating issues because of such small, tight, compact engine bays, not minimal, but ventilation and stuff like that. I've just heard from people that have owned them. They've had issues there with heating, overheating, and things like that. So if you're wanting to purchase, have a look, but yeah, expect to pay roughly from 100K for these. Now, another hot hatch that caught my attention was the Alfa Romeo GTV 3 liter. Now, I've got a smile on my face. You can't see it, but I've got a smile on my face because the thing that two things appealed to me about this car. Firstly was the engine. I'm not too sure if any of you guys have had a look at this thing's engine. The branches on this are, you can hear it in my voice. You guys just have to have a look at this thing's engine. it's an art. It's a piece of art that's in an engine bay. You know, people talk about Ferrari engines with a red tapered cover, or a Lamborghini with those powder coated this and that. No, this Alpha started it. Oh my word, that it just looks the part. And then of course that sound is there. Absolutely, just those 2 points, and I get goosebumps thinking about this car. But that's where it stops, because thereafter, the driving of this vehicle, the handling, listen, it's okay. It's not great. It was just that. It was okay. But just those two things, the sound of this engine and the look of that engine, my word. Yeah, fantastic. These Alphas expect anything from roughly 119 to 150K. I know this was a really expensive hot hatch. Well, if you can call it even a hot hatch back then. But they were really expensive. I just thought I'd mention that. Or rather add this, because I just remember going through, I remember the Alpha, and I said, no, let me just quickly go and have a look. And those are the two things that stood out. So yeah, definitely have a look at the Alpha if you love those two things. Now, the other hot hatch that comes to mind is the Fiesta ST. Actually, there's two types of Fords here. I'll get to the second one shortly, but the Fiesta ST, again, drove this. Absolutely brilliant vehicle. It's very similar to the Clio 197. You really had to wring its neck to get the most out of it. Fantastic handling. It really is one of those vehicles where it really puts a smile on your face, just like the Clio 197. It really puts a smile on your face. Those windy roads, it just stays planted to the road while driving on these back roads. You know, you can really push the car to its on those back roads, and it really gives you that fun-filled joy, really, of driving. That, hey, you were able to push the car, and you get rewarded for doing that. These Focus STs, I saw them for roughly 140, 150K. And I think, again, considering what you're getting, it's a reasonable amount to pay. Now, its bigger brother, the Focus ST, my word, that, again, guys, that was just a step up. Still in the hot hatch range. This had a 2.5 liter engine. Again, I remember driving this, and oh my word, fantastic vehicle. It was a wolf in sheep's clothing. That was what this vehicle was. It really had that muscular performance when you needed it from the 2.5 liter turbocharged engine. The soundtrack that it had also was absolutely brilliant. Again, I'm having goosebumps thinking about when I drove that car. Absolutely awesome car. It's just a pity now that the majority of the Focus STs have just been aftermarket this, aftermarket that, turbocharged the hell out of that engine. So if you can get a clean one with no modifications, I think you would definitely grab it. I've seen prices from 160K going up, but I'm sure at 160K, that's for a molested Focus ST. So we now have the BMW. Now there's two variants of the BMWs. So firstly, it's the normally aspirated 130i, 3 liter straight six. Of course, it was overshadowed by the 135, but I'll get to the 135 shortly. So the 130 rear wheel drive, in fact, from all the hot hatches that I mentioned, this was the first rear wheel drive car introduced into the hot hatch. And BMW realized that, launched this vehicle. It really was. I mean, they had their 3 liter straight six engine in this, unheard of in a hatchback with rear wheel drive. And it really gave you that driving pleasure, that sheer driving pleasure that BMW is known for. Just the fun that I had in this vehicle, the torque from low down all the way up to the high end of the rev range. It was truly a versatile car. It was absolutely fantastic. But enter the 135i, and oh my word, this changed the game massively. It trumped, in my opinion, it trumped every hot hatch out there. Yes, it was on the upper, more expensive hot hatch, but man, oh man, that early models initially came with a twin turbo setup, 3 liter straight six setup. But man, oh man, brilliant. You're not battling to describe it, but you know, just going back to when I drove this, a buddy car of mine, we went up to, from Durban, we drove up to Johannesburg for the Lincoln Park concert. And I was a designated driver, and I really had fun driving this car. Obviously within speed limits, but man, this vehicle truly delivered. Yeah, I'm running out of words to describe this vehicle. But definitely, it was an awesome vehicle. Price range anything from 150 to 200k. Yeah, this is a really good vehicle. Of course, it also came with the interior, classy leather everywhere, opulent interior. So we have another German entrant, and that is the Audi S3. Now the Audi S3, I remember when this vehicle came out, getting into it, man, it delivered. Build quality. Firstly, okay, let's start with the build quality. Audi has always been known for its interior build quality, and man, it really shows in that S3. Solidly built. The seats, absolutely comfortable. If I remember correctly, those also came with Recaro seats, if I remember correctly. Very supportive, leather everywhere. It really was a premium hot hatch, like the BMW. Premium feeling, premium price obviously at the time as well. Fantastic vehicle. I think where the Audi was let down was the fact that it didn't really offer you the driving sensation like a Golf or a BMW, the 135 or even the 130. You know, you always got out of the Audi, well, me that is, I always got out of the Audi thinking there was no real sense of engagement with the vehicle. Listen, the car was bloody fast. But there was just no sense of, the car was dead, if that makes sense. It was quick, but it was dead. You didn't get out of the car feeling, wow, this coming into the bend, this really kept you on edge, or that thrill of driving. Does that make sense? But anyway, the Audi also really good. There's always people out there that love the Audi, that love the safeness associated with the Audi. And these vary in price. From what I saw, a good clean quality one, roughly from 140k to around about 200k for those early Audi S3s. So if it was up to me, what would I buy? Listen, there's one that really stands out. Listen, I've been very fortunate enough to drive every single one of them and push them to see what these cars are capable of. That Alpha is fantastic, but it's got lots of issues, reliability issues, chief among them electrical issues from people that I've spoken to. So no, definitely not the Alpha. I mean, I'll be spending a lot of money trying to fix things that go wrong in the Alpha. I'm sure you guys have heard me say this, and I've compared lots of vehicles. That Golf 5 GTI, man, it really is, even up to now, compared to other Golf, in my opinion, it really started with the Golf 5. It just revolutionized everything. Turbocharging, DSG box, practicality, the interior, the build quality, that lushness, that opulent interior. The Golf 5 also, that's a really, really good vehicle. But the vehicle for me that I would definitely buy would be that 135i. That's straight six, turbocharged engine. That is just phenomenal. You add that to a rear wheel drive car, and you have a recipe for proper driver engagement, sheer driving pleasure, BMW's tagline. And yeah, man, that vehicle always put a smile on my face, and I didn't need to ring this car out to get maximum performance. I mean, I remember just going down to the shop to get some stuff, and I was, you know, just driving or changing gears, I think around about 1,500 ish RPM, changing gears. I just loved it. And when I needed to push the vehicle, it had plenty of torque, low down all the way up to the top of the rev range. This car was just phenomenal, and for that would be my pick. that BMW 135. Let me know what your pick of the bunch would be. It would be really great to hear from you guys. Thank you all for listening in, and join me on the next podcast. Bye.